Tech TV, experience educational television.
Thank you so much for joining us live on Tech TV. My name is Emmanuel Nana Yeboah, and today we're talking about Education USA, and we have the Consul General from the U.S. Embassy Ghana here. The name is Elliott-TEK, and I happen to also have Mrs. Marilyn Owusu from the Ace Consult Kumasi to have a discussion on the various opportunities students can join in the USA, be it educational, whatever you want. So stay tuned as we bring you a lot of insight on your travel to USA, both on scholarship or you paying your fees.
Tech TV, experience educational television.
All right, so you're welcome back. Now we go into the discussion. Mr. Elliott-TEK, you welcome.
Thank you very much. Well, glad to be here.
Mrs. Marilyn Owusu from Ace Consult, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let me start from Mr. Elliott. You are the Consul General at the U.S. Embassy Ghana in Accra.
That's correct.
Now, I want to know, can you explain the different types of visas available for travel to the United States?
Sure. There are a lot of different kinds of visas. In fact, there are almost as many visa categories as there are letters of the alphabet. But I would say the two main kinds of visas that most people apply for are what we call the visitor visa, or the B1, B2 visa, and the student visa, or the F1 visa. And each category has different requirements that you need to go through. But in general, those are the two main categories.
Okay, so what are some of the documents required for a successful visa application here?
Sure. Well, there are a few documents that are required. For example, obviously your passport, and you also have to have proof that you've actually paid for the application fee. And in some categories of visa, for example, like students, there are certain forms that you need to have when you come for the visa interview. But there's a lot of misunderstanding about what documents are required. Many people think that, especially for the visitor visa, you have to bring lots and lots of documents with you for, your bank statements, the deed to your home. And that generally just is not true. And in fact, it is very likely that during the visa interview, the consular officer will not even ask you to look at the documents. Instead, they're going to focus on your answers to the questions that the officer poses. So if people are watching, if they can get something from this, it is that you don't need to bring tons and tons of documents to the visa interview. Instead, you should focus on what your answer to the questions are.
Okay, so do you, recommend middlemen trying to help students getting visa to the United States, or they should do it themselves? I
strongly recommend against it. You do not need a middleman to go through the visa application process. All of the information is available on the U.S. Embassy's websites under the category of visas. It gives you detailed explanations on what forms to fill out, what documents you need, and just how to go through the process of applying for a visa. There are a lot of middlemen and brokers who claim that if you pay them a lot of money, they can guarantee you a visa. They're lying. There's no special way to get a visa. If you just follow the process as everyone else, you will have an equal chance of getting a visa as anyone who pays hundreds of dollars to a middleman.
Now, let me ask this. We have middlemen and we have travel and tour agencies. Mm-hmm. Do you recommend travel and tour agencies too?
Well, there are few people who will offer you, they will help you with the application. Maybe they'll fill out the forms for you, get you a passport and things like that. And sometimes they may charge a fee. I'm not saying that every single middleman is a scam artist. At the same time, there's no question you can always do it yourself. And I would also recommend to people that if you have someone who maybe does need some help with your visa application process, instead of going to a travel agent or a middleman, ask your family for help. Ask, your niece or nephew who's always playing video games, that they may probably be able to help you better, and that they have your best interest at heart rather than someone you're paying a lot of money to.
Okay, let me speak to Mrs. Marilyn Owusu, Ace Consult. Now, what is all about Education USA?
Okay, thanks for asking. Education USA is a U.S. government network of advising centers worldwide. So there's over 175 Education USA advising centers worldwide. And in Ghana, there are 2 education advising centers.
Okay.
One at the US Embassy in Accra, and one here at Embassy Consult, Accra. What Education USA does is to help every student in every country to get free access to information about studying in the US.
Okay.
And give guidance to help them to apply to schools with as much funding as possible. So that's the role of Education USA.
So what's your role when it comes to, helping students attain visa to the United States? What specific role do you play?
We don't have a rule.
Okay.
There are 5 steps that every Education USA center takes students through. Step 1 is to help them to research their options. Step 2 is to help them to know how to finance their studies in the US. Step 3 is to guide them through the application process. Step 4 is visa orientation, not visa process, not getting visas.
Okay.
Visa orientation. And step 5 is pre-departure orientation. So when it comes to Education USA, most of the time we work with consular at the US Embassy to give guidance to our students as to what they need to do to be able to successfully apply for visas. Because we have a fair idea of documents that may be required. Let's say you need your I-20, you need your admission letter, you need your academic documents.
Okay.
We can guide them that these are the important documents you need to present when it comes to applying for visas. But we don't apply for visas for them.
Okay.
We don't tell them this is how it's done. We give guidance. We give orientation to help the students know how to prepare for their visas.
All right, so in case you just joined us, you are on Tech TV and we're talking about various opportunities students do have, traveling to the United States. And then we have the Consul General here in Accra, and his name is Elliot Fatigue. And I'll be talking to Marilyn Owusu from the Embassy Consul. I'll be coming to you to ask you more about some of the scholarship opportunities that students can get when they want to travel without they having the fees or the finances to go. Let me come to Mr. Elliot. What are some of the most common mistakes, or reasons why people are denying their visas?
Well, every case is unique. Every case was decided on the merits of the applicant who is in front of the consular officer.
Okay.
But I would say the biggest mistake that sometimes people make is simply not being honest.
They're not being honest.
They're not being honest. And sometimes even people who might otherwise qualify just say something that's not true because they think they have to say certain things, or they have to present fake documents. And our officers are very good at detecting deceit. And if they find out that you've presented fake documents or that you have been lying during the interview, it is very likely you will be barred from the United States for life. So I think that is the biggest mistake that a lot of applicants make. I think another mistake that a lot of people make, it goes back to, they think that if they just bring the right document, that's the reason that they might be denied in an earlier time. They just need to find the right set of documents or the right answers, and they'll get the visa. I think that is just a myth. Either the officers are going to make the decision based on your own qualifications, whether or not you have enough ties to Ghana that show that you'll come back after a short visit to the United States. Or in the case of a student, are you a bona fide student, and can you pay for the education that you're going to be doing in the United States? That's what we focus on. And I think some people think there's a magic formula or some secret of getting a visa. There isn't. All the qualifications about and the information about the process is on our website, and just read it and you'll be much better informed than you would be by going off of rumors or what someone might say on the internet.
Yes, so this even brings me to my next question. So a lot of people do say that sometimes only one question is asked and then you have been denied a visa. You don't have opportunity of trying to, explain yourself. Why?
Well, it is true that most visa interviews are relatively short, but usually the consular officer will ask several questions, and the idea of finding out whether or not they have some person in front of them has enough ties to Ghana to qualify for the visa, or whether or not they are qualified for a student visa in the case of a student visa interview. And I would encourage applicants to just, when they're answering the questions, make their answers short and succinct, but also try to give as much information as they can about why they qualify for the visa, what their ties are to Ghana to show that they qualify for the visa.
All right, so how long does it take for the visa application? I mean, I'm talking about the duration.
Sure. It varies tremendously based on the type of visa, on what is going on in each individual case. So the actual, starting the application process of, paying the fee, going online, trying to find an appointment, it does not take long, only a couple of days. And of course, the actual visa interview, when you go for the visa interview, you'll get a decision. In most cases, you will get a decision that day. And then if you either refused or you found to be qualified. However, finding a visa application appointment date can be sometimes challenging. I mean, I know it's no secret that unfortunately our wait times are longer than we might like. But what I would encourage people to do is to apply as early as you can, and if you can't find a date that works for you, keep trying. I'll also mention that there are in some circumstances, people who might be able to get a visa without an interview if they are renewing their visa. And again, our website has information about that process. Also, we do have a very limited number of slots for emergency applications, people who might be going to the United States on urgent medical or business-related travel. And also sometimes we also have some slots that are reserved for students. But again, these are very hard to get, and they really have to be a very urgent case in order to be able to apply for them. If you're interested and you think you might qualify for an emergency appointment, again, go to the embassy's website where they have the information about how the process of applying for that.
Does it have any special cost for that?
No.
Emergency visa? No,
there is no additional cost for asking for an emergency visa. But I will say you can only ask for it once.
Once?
Yes.
All right. So let me talk to Mrs. Marilyn Owusu here. Now, do we have some scholarship opportunities for students or people who want to travel?
There's a lot of scholarship opportunities.
Okay.
From undergraduate to graduate to undergraduate and graduate. Whoever graduates is masters and PhD.
Okay.
I'll take my time to explain the differences.
Okay.
For undergraduates, we have what we call the need-based scholarships and the merit-based scholarships. Need-based scholarships, just about 100 of over almost 5,000 universities in the US give the need-based scholarship. But they give full funding.
You mean need-based scholarship?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Sure. They will assess you and know how much you need to be able to fully study in the US without any extra cost to you. So you fill forms, and if you qualify, what makes you qualify is great academic strength. You'd have to demonstrate a lot of leadership. You'd have to be involved in extracurricular activities. And all that together with the strong academics makes you qualify for a need-based scholarship. So as you apply to the schools for general admission, you also fill a form to ask for financial assistance. And when the schools feel that you do qualify, they give you everything to be able to come. There have been students who've gotten full admission, tuition paid, living expenses paid. Sometimes you get a laptop when you get to campus. Sometimes you get 2 tickets to come back home before you finish. But that's undergraduate. Then there's the merit-based scholarship. The merit-based scholarship is what makes people write the SAT exams, the TOEFL exams, and all the other exams. Schools will look at your academic...
Do you organize such exams at your place?
We do.
Okay.
We do. The merit-based scholarship, schools will look at your academics from WASI and then decide, oh, these grades are very strong. Not all the schools require the SAT and the different exams. But a lot of the schools that give them merit-based funding will ask you to write a standardized test where they can compare you to other students applying. And then if you actually qualify, let's say they would say if you have, say, 1,400, this is just an example, out of 1,600 on the SATs, we can give you $10,000 for just attaining that. So those are the different types of merit-based scholarships you can get. And it ranges. Sometimes it's full tuition, sometimes it's a fixed amount of money, sometimes it's almost full funding, so it ranges. So this for undergraduate. Then for graduates, there's master's, there's PhD. One thing most Ghanaians are not aware of is that most universities in the US, especially when you are doing anything STEM related, you can use your first degree to apply straight to a PhD program.
Oh, really?
And that's what makes the US very different from a lot of countries. So you have the option of doing your master's, all right, but you can go straight into a PhD program, especially those in the STEM fields.
So does it mean you're going to have a longer years to complete your PhD?
Yes, you have longer years to complete your PhD, but you can go straight into it.
So does it mean you should have first class or maybe second class upper before?
The good thing with US education and US universities is that they use a holistic approach to admit you. They don't just use your grades. The grades determine a lot of things. But I've seen that most students who give back to society in their own way stand a lot of chances of getting a lot of funding from US schools. They want to make sure that when they invest in you, you give back to society. So that's why they ask for leadership skills. They ask for different things to determine how strong a person you are. So it's not just about academics. They look at you as a whole person, and different things will help you to get the funding you need. So going back to the graduate scholarships or graduate funding, there are different types of funding for graduate students. There is the chance to be a teaching assistant, which gives you the high chance of getting full tuition paid, and then they give you a stipend that takes care of your living expenses. You can be a research assistant, you can be a graduate assistant. These come with different kinds of funding that qualifies you to get as much funding as possible. Then some schools will give you a grant. You apply for it based on research you are doing. And the grant is free money to allow you to be able to do the particular research that you want to do. Then some will also ask you to join a fellowship or do a fellowship program that gives you some kind of funding to also help you in whatever field you find yourself. So whether you are going for a master's program or a PhD program, good grades are very important. The stronger your grades, the higher your chances of getting a lot of funding. But there are other things that also help you to get these kinds of funding.
Does the courses that we do study also affect the way we get the scholarships? I mean, I'm talking about a particular program someone may, do in the first degree. Okay.
The good thing with master's or PhD programs is that when the program is a professional program, let's say an MBA, and say law, these are professional programs. So not a lot of schools give a lot of funding. But all the other programs, it doesn't matter. Once you demonstrate that you can do well in that program, you stand a chance of getting a lot of funding. It doesn't have to be a program specific, or what you did your first degree shouldn't go against you. Yes.
All right, let me come to Mr. Elliot here. Now, most people say that your emergency visas or application doesn't work. Is there any secret about that?
Well, it does work. It's just that we don't grant many of them. And again, that's just because, again, there's such a demand. It's limited, yes. There's only so many slots that are available. And again, it's just to be fair, because sometimes there are people who, with really dire emergencies, like a medical emergency, for example, and they go to the top the head of the line, because obviously their type of travel is extremely urgent. and also, as I said to you before, sometimes people don't realize that once you've applied for an expedited or emergency appointment and you've been denied, you can't do it again. But what I would say to people is that, look for other, if you are still looking for an appointment, keep trying, because we are adding capacity all of the time. And in fact, last year, for example, we did nearly 50,000 visa applications we processed. And this year we are on a pace to do 23% more. So I think, we understand that there's a lot of demand for visas, and we are adding a lot of capacity, a lot of more officers to process a lot more visas. The problem is just that there is just a huge demand for visa applications. I mean, in 2019, there was about 19,000 people who paid the fee for the visa application. And in 2023, the number of people who did that was triple what it was in 2019. So as you can see, that just the demand has skyrocketed, and we're trying to keep up as best we can.
Now, let me ask, how different is the student visa from the tourist visa? I mean, the B1, B2?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, because they have some similarities, but they're actually quite different. Obviously, for a visitor visa, what we're mostly looking at is your ties to the United States. Do you have sufficient family ties, educational ties, business ties, work ties, that you are going to come back to Ghana after a short visit in the United States? By contrast, obviously, for a student visa, the purpose of the visa is to go study in the United States. So for a student visa, we primarily look at two things. We look, first of all, are you a bona fide student? Or do you have the capacity to successfully complete your program in the United States? The second thing we look at is, do you have the funding to be able to afford the educational program that you've picked in the United States?
Okay, so when we talk about funding here, mostly we get sponsorship, or we have people who are ready to actually pay our school fees, and then we get documentation to attach, and then with all these things, sometimes like huge sums of amount in that account, yet we are being asset to the visa. And why is it like that?
Sure. When the officer is looking at funding, they're mostly looking to see, is it credible that this person from this background or with these sponsors would be able to afford it? And so it really is just based on whether or not it makes sense that the money would be there. It's an unfortunate fact that sometimes we have applicants who bring fake bank documents. So we have to be careful, and we ask, it's more than just showing a bank document that shows you have enough money in there. It's also, where did the money come from? And we ask questions about that. And if the answers are not satisfactory, then unfortunately we can't issue the visa.
Let me ask this. If somebody attains a tourist visa and gets to the United States, can the person say that, okay, I now want to school? Is that possible?
Yes, it is. We generally they need to come back to Ghana and apply for a student visa here. But there are sometimes people are able to what's called adjust status, and they change from a tourist visa to a student visa. I will say though that they need, people who do that need to be careful, because if they are denied, then they have to leave the United States.
Okay. Now let me ask, can you tell us the application calendar so that we can know that at this particular time I can apply for a school in the US and meet the deadline, even if I pay my visa fee, so I don't end up losing my money?
Okay. So typically, if you want to study in the US, we encourage you to start a year before.
A year before?
Yes. When we say a year
so
before...
So let's use 2024 as an
yes.
example.
So let's say we're in 2024.
Yes.
If you decide to study in the US now, there's a high probability you won't be able to study.
Why?
In the US this semester or the coming semester. The application process is long and thorough. So most of the time we give guidance.
If you say it's long and thorough, it's like it looks scary.
It's not scary.
Okay.
As you apply, just like Mr. Fertig was saying, you need to demonstrate that you will go there and be able to study, and go there and have enough finances to sustain yourself. Mm-hmm. If you do a quick application, let's say we are in June, and you want to go to school in August, probability that you will get funding is very limited, because most schools have application deadlines.
Okay.
And the deadlines come way before you get an answer to say, yes, we've admitted you. And the guarantee of getting funding to be able to go is also very limited.
Okay.
But if you start a year before, it gives you an advantage. Not to scare anybody, you can use 3 months to do it. You can use 6 months to do it.
Okay.
But as an education as advisor, my advice is that start a year before. It's your own benefit. Let's say you want to go to school next year, August.
Okay.
And I'm using August because we have a fall semester, we have the spring semester. Fall semester starts most of the time between August and September. Spring is normally January and February. But schools that give a lot of funding, give funding for fall,
Okay.
not spring. So that if you have this in mind, if you are starting the process, let's say most schools in Ghana, the calendar has changed for academic system.
Yes.
But originally by May, everybody would have finished whatever program they were doing if you're in 4th year of any university here in Ghana. But normally between, say, May and July, we tell you use that period to search for schools. There are almost 5,000 universities in the US. When I said step 1 is research your options, you need to check if the school has the program you want. You need to check the cost of the school.
Okay.
You need to check the location of the school.
The cost, I mean the fees.
The fees of the school.
Okay.
You need to check the location of the school. Because sometimes if the school is in a big city, living expenses will be high.
Okay.
If the school is in a suburban area, living expenses will be less. All to help you know how to plan financially to be able to study. If it's a graduate program, it will be good to get in touch with professors in the school who may be doing the same program that you want to do. Because most of the time they have money as research grants.
Okay.
And that's how come they can give you money as a research assistant. So if you use May to July to do all the search, between August and December, that's a good time to do the applications. Quite a number of schools have their deadlines to applications for 2025. Mm-hmm. It will be December this year or January 2025.
Okay.
And especially if you need funding, you should apply way before the school's deadline so that you can be considered early. So between August or September and December, that's the best time to fill all the applications and submit it. And the application process, you might need letters of recommendations from lecturers you've worked with here in Ghana. And it will take some time for them to be able to give you the recommendations. You need your transcript. All these might take a while. So just not to stress yourself. If you do the applications between August and December, you are fine. Then between January and May, or January and say April, that's when the decisions would come. Congratulations, you've been admitted. Sorry, you couldn't make it to class of 2025. As you look at the feedback from the different schools, you'd be able to take a decision as to which school you are going to. And we encourage you that the moment you get the admission, you should start thinking of your visa application process.
Okay.
So that, again, Elliot mentioned that it takes a while for us to be able to get the dates we need to be able to apply for the visa. If you get to your admission, say in March, and they are able to book an appointment in March, for you to be able to go to school in August, it gives you enough time to be able to apply for the visa. So that calendar is good if you can follow it. Just that people are able to use 3 months to do it anyway. That's stressful.
All right, so that brings you to my question. I want to ask, how are you helping the students who are supposed to go this fall?
Well, we in the summer, we call it student season.
Okay.
Because we primarily focus on doing student visa interviews in the summer, in June, July, August. In fact, it's the majority of the cases we do are for students.
Okay.
And we also do we have a certain number of slots for expedited visas for student applicants. But it is true that unfortunately we're probably not going to be able to interview everyone who's interested in applying for a student visa. So the advice I would give is,
why is it like that?
It's just because the demand exceeds the capacity. I mean, there's there's a lot of people interested in studying in the United States, which is wonderful. I mean, we are very proud of the fact that we have so many international students studying in the United States. And the fact that Ghana is the second largest sender of students in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, the number of students in the United States from Ghana is setting records.
More than Nigeria?
No, I said second. But I mean, Nigeria is a much bigger country. So I think it says a lot about Ghana, that Ghana is the second largest sender of students in sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
But the advice I would give to people who are having trouble finding an appointment date is two things. First, continue to monitor our website and our appointment calendar and look for additional appointments. We often add additional appointments throughout the year as we get more capacity, as we have, as spaces become available. So just keep on monitoring it. The second thing is, I would talk to your school, because most schools are very flexible about potentially deferring your admission if you're not able to get a visa appointment. They'll be very sympathetic, and they'll understand that it may be challenging in some countries like Ghana to get an appointment in time. And if that happens, I would just simply talk to them and say, look, I can't find a visa appointment. Can I defer my admission until December or until next year? And while you may have to wait a little longer, at least that way you won't have this situation where you're frantically trying to get a visa at the last minute.
So in 2023, how many, visas did you issue?
Well, we actually processed a record number of visas. In fact, we processed over 50,000 visas, and we issued more visas than we've ever issued before. And we issued more student visas than we've ever issued before. And this year, in 2024, we are actually on a pace to issue 23% more visas than we did last year. So as you can see, we are really trying to keep up with the demand. It's just that the demand is very strong.
All right, so the demand is strong because Africa is really hot, and we really have to get better education in the US. Let me come to you. Can anyone get easy visa to US? Is it easy? Talking about school?
I'm happy you're asking me this. With the head of consular section sitting right by me, he would be the best person to answer that question. For our students, what we've noticed is that those who are able to do the right things from the beginning, looking for the right kind
from the beginning means
the right school.
Okay.
If you do
So we
your
have a right
research,
school and we have schools.
if you do your research well, some schools don't cost much. If you do your research well,
Okay.
some schools don't cost much. So if you're able to do your research very well, by the time it gets, consular officers take their own decisions. But what we realize is that most schools, most students who do proper research and who are able to articulate what they are going to do and why they are going to do it, most of the time they get their visas. And it's not through any expertise of ours. I've been an advisor for 22 years, going to 23 years. Over the years, that's what I've seen. Students who come to the center do proper research. And sometimes even for us as advisors, you'd be surprised that a student can come to you and say that looking at the living expenses and the tuition of this particular school, total fees is coming to about 18,000, which I wouldn't have noticed because I've done a lot of work with different people.
Yes.
So when they do their research well, they are able to, one, get better financial opportunities, and two, be able to articulate why they are going to those particular schools. Just because they did the research themselves.
Well, it means that it can be denied?
I have no idea how visas are given. So please
If
ask
I may ask,
yes.
if the person can really speak well or defend him or herself well, it means that you lose in spite of all the good documents you have.
I mean, during the interview, what my colleague was saying really makes sense, because what we're looking at is, are you truly a bona fide student? Are you someone who's really going to the United States to do studies, or is there some other reason? And if you're able to explain why you chose this school, how you're going to be able to afford it, you've done the research, that comes across during the visa interview. And I think your chances of getting the visa are enhanced if you're able to credibly explain why you picked this school and how you're able to afford it.
So is there any instance where the consular may get tired and say that I've issued too much visa, so let me start denying people?
No, there are no quotas. Every case is decided on its own individual merits. So in consular officers, I mean, sometimes you have days when you're issuing almost everyone, and sometimes you're issuing days when the applicants simply aren't qualified. It's just every decision when someone comes to the window, the consular officer starts anew and makes the decision based on what they hear from the applicant.
So there's not a bad day?
I mean, it's not from our point of view, it's actually a good day when we are able to issue the visas. We want people to study in the United States. Consular officers want to issue the visas, but they have to make sure that the applicant is qualified.
All right, so we still on Tech TV, and we've been talking to Embassy. He's the Consul General in Accra, and then we have Mrs. Marilyn Owusu's Ace Consult. Do you have any advice for our listeners, those who really want to travel in school in the United States?
The first thing I want to say before I give my advice is that we will have a college fair this year here on KNUST-TEK campus on the 12th of September. 12th of September. Okay. There'll be a slot for undergraduate students and there'll be a slot for graduate students.
When you say there is going to be a slot, it means that you have
the mornings would be for undergraduate students, those in senior high schools.
Okay.
And those in senior high schools or those who want to pursue a first degree, undergraduate degree in the US. Then the afternoon would be for those who want to pursue a master's student or master's program or a PhD program. We have almost 50 universities from the US coming here right at the Great Hall of KNUST to be able to interact with every student that walks in. So people should please take note of that. And then come work with us. We give you proper guidance. All the information is free. So come in and get proper guidance on how to study in the US, how to research for schools, how to look for finances in the US, how to do a proper application to the different schools you're applying to. Step 4 is the visa orientation, general orientation for some of the questions you may want to ask. Then pre-departure orientation prepares you to be able to get to the US and do very well successfully. Okay. So for us, Ace Consult is located at Asokwa. We're at Top Martins Complex, very close to the Kumasi Mall. And we have an orientation every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. where you can walk in and be able to get everything you need in terms of information to study in the US. So we look forward to seeing as many people as possible so that we can guide them properly.
So if I'm a student and maybe level 200 or level 300 or even first year, what are some of the opportunities do I have if I also want to travel?
Okay. Every student is different and every situation is unique. When people coming in there level 300 here at say KNUST, our advice is that use the 1 year to finish and apply for a graduate program.
Okay.
Instead of abandoning the program third year to go and start first year, what's the guarantee that you get enough funding to be able to support yourself? Because our educational system is different. For fees here in Ghana, 10,000 cedis should be able to help you pay your fees and even have more left versus going to apply for first year to a school and maybe you don't get any funding at all. Okay. It puts a financial burden on you. So if you can finish, it's better. But some people first year can decide that they want to change their programs of study and go to the US to study. If it's first year, the gap from when you finish in the SHS to first year isn't too wide. So that one you can try. But if you're in final year, I'd say that please finish and come and let's work with you for graduate level.
Okay. Now, I want to know if I get admission, is it automatic I'm going to get my visa?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on whether or not you are otherwise qualified for the visa. I mean, obviously being admitted to a school is a prerequisite to even get an interview. But when we do the interview, we're not admissions officers. It's not our job to independently say, are you qualified for this school? We're looking at whether or not you qualify for the visa. And as I said before, that we're looking at whether or not you're a bona fide student, is it your intention to go study in the United States, and whether or not you can afford the program you've picked.
So interview waiver, who qualifies and what's the process?
Sure. Interview waiver is, generally speaking, it's when you're renewing your visa in the same category. So generally speaking, to qualify for an interview waiver, you need to either have a current visa or have a visa that's expired within the past 4 years, and you're applying in the same category. So for example, if you have a tourist visa and you want to renew your tourist visa, or it applied, say it expired last year, you may be able to renew it without actually needing an interview. And in general, the process is quicker than waiting for an actual interview date. If you look at our website, the U.S. Embassy's website, under visas, there's information there on how the process works and whether or not you might qualify.
Okay. Do you have any advice for students who want to travel to U.S. This year and next year?
Sure. I would really, the biggest thing I would echo my colleague is start as early as possible. It really, as you said, a year is that's actually what an American students, when they're applying for college, that's how long they take. I mean, for example, my own son is 17 years old, and he's going to be applying for college next year, and he's already looking at colleges. We're talking to colleges, doing the research, and then this fall he'll actually go through the application process. So it really is important that you start it as early as possible, because sometimes things can take longer. And if you do it as early as possible, you give yourself more time to get through all the steps that are necessary to get an admission to a college and to get a visa to go study in the United States.
My last question before we go. If a school is demanding school fees,
yes,
before I start the visa process, do you advise we have to pay the money?
If you pay the school fees ahead of time? It's a good question. It is not required, but I will say that when the process starts and we look at the form from the school, we do see whether or not you've paid the fee or not. And of course, if you've already actually paid the fee, that might go to showing you actually can afford it. So it is up to each individual student, but it's probably not a bad idea.
So advice, sometimes when they demand, we should pay. That can aid us getting the visa.
I'm not saying, I can't guarantee one way or the other, but I do, as I said, I do think that it is something that if you've already given the money to the school and that shows up on your I-20, that does say that that the money was at least present to pay for the school fees.
How can somebody contact you as Embassy if the person is having some challenges applying?
Sure.
Or it may be denied visa and want to ask more questions?
Sure. I would just Google U.S. Embassy Accra, and then go to our website, which is US Embassy, accra.usembassy.gov, and then you will be able to you'll go onto the website, look under visas, and there's information there on how to contact us or how to get more information about the visa application process.
All right, thank you so much for coming. It's been very insightful discussion, and I know our students or anybody listening to us will have more education when you really want to travel to US, be it scholarship or any process. Ace Consult is also in Kumasi to help you. And you said come in July, there's going to be a program.
September.
The
12th of September. It'll be the Khalid Fair, bringing 50 universities from the US to interact with all Ghanaians. 12th of September here in Kumasi, but Accra, because there's Education USA Accra, Education Accra would also be hosting the College Fair on the 13th and the 14th with the same universities. So Kumasi starts on the 12th, Accra has theirs 13th and 14th of September.
All right, so you can get more of these on Tech TV, KNUST-TEK, and you can also go to the US Embassy website to get more information on their social media handles. There are a lot of information for you out there, but don't forget to research more about the school you really want to go in the USA. My name is Emmanuel Nana Yeboah, and I did this with Mrs. Marinin Owusu, the CEO of Ace Consult, and then the Consul General in Accra, Elliot Fetty. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Tech TV. Experience educational television.